July 24th, 1943. Hamburg, Germany. The clock struck 10:57 p.m. when the first siren screamed across the blackened sky. In the narrow streets of Hammerbrook, 12-year-old Lissel Muller froze mid-step, clutching her mother's hand as the world around her seemed to stop breathing. Then came the hum, deep and distant at first, like a growl from the heavens. Within moments, it became a roar. The people of Hamburg knew that sound too well. The Lancaster bombers of the Royal Air Force were coming. Lissel's father, Erich Muller, had already pulled the blackout curtains tight and packed a small satchel, bread, water, and a single photograph of the family taken before the war. "Run," he shouted, guiding his wife and daughter toward the cellar beneath their building. The air outside shimmered faintly with the heat of a city already half in ruins. As they reached the shelter door, Lissel glanced upward. Dozens of searchlights clawed the night sky, converging on silver silhouettes far above. Then came the whistle, a sharp, metallic scream descending faster than thought. The earth shook. A wall of air slapped her face, followed by a thunderous explosion that cracked windows for blocks. The first bombs hit the shipyards. Then the second wave targeted the heart of the city. Fire leapt from rooftop to rooftop, swallowing wood and brick alike. The air thickened with smoke and the smell of burning oil. Down in the cellar, the lights flickered as the ground trembled again. Lissel buried her face into her mother's coat. Above them, the firestorm began, a roaring inferno that would soon pull oxygen straight from the streets, sucking people into its blazing heart. Outside, the sky was no longer black. It burned red. The red glow outside their cellar door brightened until it seemed daylight had returned. Only this light was alive, wild, and hungry. Eric cracked open the shelter door for a breath of air, but a blast of heat slammed it shut again. "It's the firestorm," he whispered, sweat pouring down his face. The air outside had become an inferno. The flames were no longer spreading from bomb to bomb. They were feeding themselves, merging into a single monstrous blaze that roared through the city. Above ground, the streets were chaos. Entire rows of houses burned like torches. Asphalt melted into rivers of flame. The wind, drawn into the firestorm's core, screamed down the alleyways at over 100 miles per hour, pulling people off their feet and into the fire. Inside the cellar, Lissel could barely breathe. The air was heavy, tasting of soot and ash. Somewhere nearby, a child cried out, a sound that vanished beneath the thunder of collapsing buildings. "Papa," Lissel gasped, "it's getting hot." Eric wrapped his daughter in a damp blanket and motioned for his wife to do the same. "If the flames reach us, we run to the canal," he said. But they all knew what that meant. The canals were full of people already, trying to escape the heat, their screams echoing under the burning bridges. Minutes turned to hours. Each explosion sounded closer than the last. Dust rained from the ceiling as the house above them groaned and shifted. Then, without warning, the cellar door burst open, the hinges glowing red. A rush of hot wind slammed Lissel backward, scattering embers into the room. Her mother screamed. Eric grabbed Lissel by the arm and shouted, "Now! We go now!" And so they ran, into a city where even the air itself was on fire. The moment Lissel stepped outside, the night consumed her. The street she once played in was gone. Only a jagged trail of smoke and sparks remained. The air shimmered like a furnace, pressing against her lungs with every breath. Her father led the way, his arm shielding his face from the fiery wind. Lissel held her mother's hand tightly as the three of them stumbled over fallen beams and shattered glass. The sound was unbearable. Sirens, explosions, screams, and a constant howl of air being devoured by flame. The firestorm raged with a life of its own. Every breath of wind seemed to whip the flames higher, tearing roofs apart and dragging embers into the sky. The heat melted the soles of Lissel's shoes. She could feel her skin burning even beneath the blanket her mother had wrapped around her. They passed what had once been the bakery, a place Lissel loved for the smell of warm bread. Now it was a skeleton of iron and smoke. She saw a woman kneeling on the cobblestones, her arms wrapped around a bundle that no longer moved. Her hair was on fire. Eric turned Lissel's face away and shouted, "Don't look, keep running." They pushed forward toward the Backer Canal, a narrow stretch of water that cut through the old quarter. The air grew hotter with each step. The oxygen seemed to vanish, replaced by heat that made every breath feel like swallowing knives. Then, another explosion. The shock wave threw them to the ground. Lissel's ears rang as a rain of bricks fell around them. Through the smoke, she saw the faint glimmer of water ahead. The canal. People were jumping in, splashing wildly, clinging to anything that floated. Some never resurfaced. Eric lifted Lissel into his arms and staggered toward the edge. "Hold your breath," he said, his voice hoarse. "Don't let go." Together, they plunged into the black, boiling water as the firestorm screamed above them. The moment Lissel hit the water, the shock nearly stole her breath. It wasn't cold, it was hot, steaming from the inferno that surrounded them. Ash and debris floated everywhere, and the surface shimmered with oil and soot. Her father's hand gripped her tightly, forcing her under just as another blast ripped through the street above. When they surfaced, Lissel gasped for air thick with smoke. The world was chaos. The canal was crammed with people. Mothers clutching babies, old men holding onto planks, soldiers shouting orders no one could hear. Flames reflected off the water like molten glass. The heat was so intense it singed the skin of anyone too close to the shore. Her mother coughed violently, her face gray with ash. "Eric," she whispered, "we can't stay here." But there was nowhere else to go. The air above was alive with sparks. The sky itself looked like it was on fire. Buildings along the banks crumbled into the water, sending waves across the canal. Every few seconds, another explosion shook the city. The Lancasters had passed, but the incendiary bombs they dropped were still doing their work, igniting everything that could burn. Lissel could hear the terrifying roar of oxygen being sucked into the flames, a sound like the world breathing its last breath. Her father spotted an old barge near a bridge, half sunk but still afloat. "Swim to that," he shouted. They pushed through the floating wreckage, their bodies slick with soot and grime. Lissel's small hands burned as she gripped the metal edge, but she pulled herself up, trembling, her mother right behind. From the deck of the wrecked barge, Lissel turned and looked back. The city of Hamburg, her city, was gone. Streets she had walked every day were now rivers of fire. The church steeple, where the bells once rang, was nothing but a black spike jutting from smoke. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The tears had already burned away. And want to see what happens next? Click the video on the right to watch part 2.